Tucson's largest school district is in the process of updating its sex education curriculum for the first time since 2006. Changes proposed include teaching beyond abstinence only as the only effective way to prevent pregnancies and STDs. It also takes a more gender-neutral position, removing language that may offend LGBT students. Strong and divisive feedback from the public led the school board to delay a final vote this month. To understand the controversy, we heard from people on both sides of the issue. We begin with Abed Orozco, a pastor and father who spoke out against the proposed changes.
First of all, let me debunk any notions that we are homophobic or we are against any other beliefs or anything like that. We just, our concerns is, like I've said before, is we believe that the school is the second home, but the home is the first school of our children. And that they're taking a little too many liberties to share with our children things that I believe belong in the family first.
You're a pastor, you know that some families are not having these conversations at home. So whose responsibility should it be when the parents aren't talking about it, but the students are curious? Interestingly
enough, one of the items that I heard the board, TUSD board, discussing once they decided to postpone the decision, it was one of those things that they educate the parents. Why don't we educate the parents? Why don't we teach the parents what it is that we are trying to teach their children? And then they can take the lead on education in that area, and then the school can come in behind, and like a school should be, not indoctrination, but education. Educate them on these things.
When you say indoctrination, are you saying like the district introducing homosexuality, for example, to students?
Yeah, we believe in sex education, yes. Teach them how you came to earth, how a boy and a girl. But beyond that, and begin to transgender fluidity and you just be whoever you know, that's something that can come later, and they can decide for themselves once their minds are fully developed, once their emotions are fully developed. That is the whole thing. We are not against it at all.
Some of this has become religious and political. Early on in the interview, though, you said that it's not. So
it isn't.
What is it really about then?
It is not about religious. It is about family values. But we happen to be, the ones that got a whiff of it happen to be mostly pastors. So, and then we begin to include family. Then the families that are not even religious, that don't consider themselves Latinos, begin to say, hey, wait a minute, I don't feel comfortable with this education, our kids being educated this way by the school.
There are probably people watching this who will say, you're traditional, you're out of touch. What do you say to them?
We are not out of touch. We know there are different genders out there, different ways. It is impossible, like we say in Spanish, you know, to tapar el sol con un dedo. So you cannot cover the sun with one finger. It's everywhere. But how it begins in our children, why would you want to indoctrinate? It's just the same thing, you know, you don't let us pray in school, you don't let us teach about Jesus. You know, we understand this because there are so many other things that are being taught that you don't want to teach just one thing, but exactly the same thing. Why would not be teaching about the Bible, but they are able to teach about other things that are not, our kids are not prepared to digest yet.
Those in favor of reforming TUSD's sex ed curriculum include Russell Toomey, a father and professor at the U of A School of Family and Consumer Sciences.
I'm really excited about the proposed curriculum to make the curriculum that's taught in K through 12 classrooms more inclusive of LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender identities or experiences, as well as to provide medically accurate, comprehensive sex education to all students who deserve knowledge about how to keep their bodies healthy, how to keep relationships healthy, and how to make those decisions around sexuality.
There are families who say these sorts of conversations are better left in the home environment. Is that an argument that you can understand, that you see the value of?
I can definitely see the importance of religious beliefs and beliefs that center sexuality as being a family topic. But I think it's also important as we look at like Arizona statistics around risky sexual behavior. We see some alarming statistics that really suggest that perhaps we need to be including this content at school so that every child who's in school has the opportunity to learn about how to keep their bodies safe. And I think it's important to note that this curriculum is actually an opt-in curriculum. So the parents who are choosing or thinking that they do not want their child to receive this curriculum actually don't even have to do anything, and their child will not receive the curriculum.
One of the arguments the opposition has stated is that this is about sexuality, not sex ed. In addition to being a parent, you're also a professor who studies this very issue at the University of Arizona. In your research, exposing children to these concepts, ideas, is that detrimental to their development?
Absolutely not. So we know that children actually pretty strongly and firmly know who they are as children, specific to gender around the ages of 2 to 3. So we're not exposing them to anything new. We're exposing them potentially to really understand themselves better and to give terminology or language to an experience that they may be experiencing. We also know that the curriculum is not going to go and teach inappropriate or age-inappropriate content. It is age-appropriate content. And so the information on, for instance, LGBT identities does not even come up until middle school. And by that point, we know that most children have been exposed to information about LGBT identities.
The opposition has also expressed concern about indoctrination. That's exposing them to things that are perhaps not traditional in some circles. Things like homosexuality. What's your response to that?
Well, I would say it's like any public health campaign. We know that when we provide information about things like alcohol use, when we talk to youth about alcohol use, it does not increase alcohol use. Just like talking about sexuality and sex ed in particular, comprehensive sex ed is not associated with higher rates of teen pregnancy, for example, or more teens engaging in sex. Very similar to homosexuality or gay, lesbian, bisexual, sexual minority identities and experiences. There's no correlation or causation between talking about these identities and children adopting these identities.
As for TUSD's next steps, the board decided to spend the next few months reworking the curriculum before taking a final vote. We got insight into the district's approach from AZPM education reporter Duncan Moon. What does state law require that TUSD actually teach its students about sex ed?
Well, it doesn't require that they teach them anything about sex ed. It is entirely optional. But if they're going to teach sex ed, they must teach that abstinence only is the only foolproof way, 100% way of preventing unwanted pregnancy. So that has to be not only in the curriculum, but it has to be upfront. It has to be the prime thing that you're teaching. Below that, nothing else is mandated. They don't have to talk about it being medically accurate. It doesn't have to be medically accurate. They don't have to talk about contraception or anything like that. So they don't have to do it, but if they do, it has to include abstinence only.
One of the things that has been part of this discussion is that if families don't want to participate or don't want their child enrolled in that class, they don't have to be. Is that true?
That's exactly true. In fact, the way it's set up by state law is, there was some confusion about this. Parents were saying it's opt-out. I can take my children out. But actually by state law, if you want your child to take sexual education in the school, you have to opt in. You have to take a piece of paper and sign it, and the letter has to say, I want my child to be in sexual education class in school. So it is entirely an opt-in program.
I know you have attended many of these forums held throughout the semester thus far. What are you gleaning from the pro and the con sides in this argument?
Well, I think it's a very gray issue, and it cuts deeply into culture. I think especially with a large Hispanic culture in TUSD, many people, one after another at these public hearings would say, this conflicts with my culture. I find this offensive. We teach our children what we need to teach them, and through what our culture teaches us, and that's hard to argue against. On the other hand, you have those who are saying, well, a lot has changed. Kids have YouTube now. They're seeing all sorts of things that they could never see before. And so we need to get them good information, medically accurate, whether we call it evidence-based information, so that they know these things because they have access to it now. Let's make sure that the information that they have is good so they can make the best choices that they can. So there are strong arguments on both sides that come from different places.
Okay, Duncan, we look forward to your reporting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.